The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning and welcome to the November edition of the HR webinar. We are truly excited that you have decided to join us. I am Carol Bowman from the Beginning Teacher Development and Support Team, and it is my pleasure to serve as your hostess today. We conduct webinars in order to communicate to schools and departments specific human resources updates that affect education and the work that you do. This webinar is being recorded and will be posted on the Human Resources Webinars page on the CMS intranet. During the webinar, please type any questions in the chat box. Our subject matter experts will be monitoring questions and we will respond after each topic. There is a handout in HR webinar. Any links that will be referenced throughout our presentation are included in that handout. We ask you adhere to these webinar norms. Minimize outside distractions, be attentive, and use the questions bar on your dashboard to ask questions. Today's agenda is as follows. Talent acquisition will share student teachers and recruitment. CMS Teaching Residency will discuss program updates. Licensure will share licensure updates. Beginning Teacher Development and Support will share BTSP updates. Teacher Leader Pathway will discuss Requalification, Talent Pool, and Onboarding. Performance Management will share PCL's Corrective Action Plans and Power BI. And lastly, Employee Relations will discuss Workplace Accommodations. First, we have Corinda Beeman from Talent Acquisitions.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much. My name is Corinda Beeman, a recruiter for secondary, middle, and high schools and K-12 licenses. We also, on our recruitment and talent acquisition team, we have Carla Chambers-Stanback, recruiter for elementary, exceptional children, and EL, as well as Kylie Peoples, recruiter for student teachers, Laura Bynack, recruiter for non-instructional and support services, and Christine Smith, recruiter for alternative license. We are extremely excited to announce that CMS has a new signing bonus available for student teachers that are hired in a teaching position with CMS. We have two different teacher signing bonuses available. The first is student teachers that complete their student teaching within CMS. They will be eligible for a $10,000 bonus. That's correct, a $10,000 bonus. The second, student teachers that complete their student teaching in another district, they will be eligible for a $7,500 bonus. This is truly an exciting initiative for us, and information has been shared with our current student teachers and our university partners to help spread the exciting news. We are expecting this to be a huge initiative and a great opportunity for our future educators. So please, please help us by spreading the word. And if you have questions pertaining to this exciting bonus opportunity for student teachers, please reach out to our student teacher recruiter, Kylie Peoples. The next few student teacher slides are based off our hiring report for our last year, 2021-2022 student teachers. Please note, we had a 77% conversion rate of student teachers into CMS employees. 16% of student teachers were hired into substitute or guest teaching roles. 3% were hired into teaching assistant roles, and 57% were hired as teachers, and 23% were not hired in CMS. We then looked to see how many student teachers were hired at the same location that they completed their student teaching. 31% of student teachers were not hired at the same school where they completed their placement, and 48% were hired at the same school where they completed their placement. You can also see a breakdown of student teacher hires based on learning communities. On this slide, we compared school student teaching placement versus school student teaching hires by school and by learning community. The blue bar indicates how many student teachers each school hosted, and the purple bar indicates how many student teachers were hired at each school. On this slide, we have the Central, East, North, South, and West learning communities broken out. Please note that on this slide, we have the Northwest, Northeast, Southeast, and Southwest learning communities broken out, comparing school student teaching placements versus school student teaching hires by school and by learning community. Again, the blue bar indicates how many student teachers each school hosted, and the purple bar indicates how many student teachers were hired at each school. Our final slide on student-teacher conversion numbers shows the percentage of student-teacher hires by school type. 3% of student teachers were hired by CSI schools. 44% of student teachers were hired by non-Title I schools, and 32% of student teachers were hired by Title I schools. We hope that you have found this information helpful as we continue to build relationships with our student teachers and confirming school placements for them throughout the school year. If you have any questions on this student teacher data, please contact Talent Acquisition Manager Kristen England at the email address on the screen. As we shift to talk about recruitment efforts, our recruiters have been quite busy participating virtually and in person in more than 18 events just this fall. And we are excited about filling our calendar with even more events for spring 2023. Some event highlights include Appalachian State University, Anderson University, Lander University, Elon University, Western Carolina University, Georgia Southern University, and University of Central Florida, to name a few. We are also inviting some of our district administrators to join us at a few of these events. We are meeting some awesome future educators, and we are already offering early contracts to eligible candidates. In addition to our recruitment events, the recruitment team maximizes exposure for our instructional and non-instructional vacancies. In addition to postings being placed on the CMS careers page, we also wanted to make you aware of several platforms that we utilize to post positions and source for qualified candidates. This list includes the following: Indeed, Buffer, social media platform that includes Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn; Profound Gentlemen, Latin America Chamber of Commerce; Diversity in Ed, Simplicity, and Handshake. We also post to multiple university job boards such as TeachNC, Teacher of Tomorrow, and #Teach, as well as community job boards. The recruitment team is fully committed in sourcing and referring qualified candidates to your schools in efforts to fill your vacancies. Last but not least, the alternative license job posting has been open since September 1st and will remain open until May 1st. This is a screening process for us to identify potential candidates to be recommended for current openings. This process screens applicants for CMS residency as well as other licensure areas not offered through CMS residency. Candidates are then sent next steps information for either enrolling with CMS residency or other education prep programs. This is a great way to determine eligibility for candidates. This is an exciting opportunity, so please help us by mentioning this to staff members that may be interested. Candidates can be screened for eligibility and then identified for immediate consideration to be hired for the current, yes, current, 2022-2023 school year. Thank you again for your time and attention. We know that we have shared a lot of information with you today, so if you do have questions, do not hesitate to contact us at the email listed on the screen. Thank you.
Thank you, Corinda. We currently do not have any questions at this time. Next, we have Elizabeth Wilson from the CMS Teaching Residency team.
Good morning, everybody. I hope that everyone is enjoying a fabulous fall weather. It's a little chilly today. We're going to get started. We just want to provide a few updates since we were last together. Progress reports were sent out to all residents, which you all also received a copy or should have. We reminded the residents that these are meant to be a tool to monitor their progress in meeting the program and the state requirements. Just as an FYI, some residents do complete all of their testing in 1 year, while others use 3 years that they have to complete the testing in total. If they're in elementary pathway, they have math, foundations of reading, both of those need to be completed within a 3-year window. If they are ECGC, they do have 3 tests. They have the Praxis 2 Special Ed Core Knowledge, as well as the Foundations of Reading and the Elementary Math Praxis. High school content areas have 2 tests, the content and the PLT test. However, if they pass EdTPA, they do not need the PLT test. So really, they just need the content test. We've linked the testing guide here, and I think they're also in your handout for you to refer to. It has the titles of tests, scores needed, just for your information if you need it. It's a resource. We've emailed all principals and clinical educators our first survey of the year on November the 1st, and we would like to have these completed no later than November the 14th so that we can review the feedback to see what changes need to be made now, what changes need to be made before spring training, and other items that we can improve the program for the next cohort. We know that it's just one more thing, but we really do appreciate the feedback, and we go through it carefully and try to make changes if necessary. EdTPA registration, I'm sure you've all heard about that, is due November the 14th at the latest. We have extended some to the end of the month because we do know that for payday that might make it a little bit easier. $300 is a lot for anyone any time of the year, but in order to receive all of their handbooks and documents to get started, they must pay at the time of registration. So that is happening right now. Iris has been busy visiting residents. Hopefully you've seen her at your school. She's completed 94 visits at their schools so far, and then not to mention hosting their ongoing Zoom sessions, phone calls with all of the residents and a majority of the clinical educators. Our residents have completed 2 tasks. There were 4 in total, but we have taken the 4th task away, just hearing some of their feedback and some of their angst around just balancing working in the classroom as well as completing coursework and other tasks that they have. So they're feeling a little bit overwhelmed. So we have taken the 4th task away. So they only have 1 more task that they need to complete, and then they're moving on to working on their EdTPA. So a few more things about EdTPA. Some people have asked for more information around the registration. So since it is time to start this process, EdTPA is short for Ed Teacher Performance Assessment. And this assessment measures the skills and knowledge that all teachers need in a classroom. It focuses on 3 tasks: planning, instruction, assessment. And these are very different than the tests that they take in their content areas. It's a portfolio type of assessment that's rated against rubrics, and it's similar to national boards. It does take a lot of work outside the classroom, so they are starting to feel a little overwhelmed getting started in this process already. So we just want to be supportive of them. So please let us know if you need more support. We do offer tutors. We have sessions for them, support sessions throughout the month of December through April until that they submit. Again, TPA registration is due November the 14th. They will pay the $300 to complete the registration. We are so lucky to have CMS Foundation as a huge supporter for us, and they have graciously come up with partial reimbursement for every single one of our residents. So all of our residents will get $150 back reimbursed to them once that they submit. So we are trying to make sure that they know that they'll get some of the money back. Again, we do host required sessions for them between December and April. We know that some clinical educators are already diving in, trying to help support them. So we just want to remind the clinical educators also that they do have the support sessions, that they will be required to come. The residents will be required to attend. And if clinical educators need more support or have more questions, they can reach out to IRIS or CMS Teaching Residency. We included an FAQ link in here and what residents can do now to prepare. And so again, some of you have asked what you can do to support them in this process. So we included a few bullets for here to answer your questions. So what you can do is just to understand the process, and it takes an additional estimated 60 hours of work outside the classroom to complete a TPA. There are videos and a lot of writing, commentary, and reflections that they will be doing. We do try to remind them that, of course, the planning, assessment, instruction, all those things are things that are already taking place in the classroom. So to try to align it as best they can to what they're already doing. Allow somebody in the building to record the resident teaching. That's always a hurdle for them. They feel like they need to record it on their own and they get stuck. So if there's someone available to help record, that would be really helpful for them. Allow some flexibility if possible during this process. And just a reminder that residents must submit no later than April 21st, 2022. Actually, that would be 2023. Excuse me. Okay. Right, so another reminder of all the supports that are available for all of our residents. We have them listed here. If you want to know about any of these supports more, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to talk about it. But we are very proud of our test prep sessions and our EdTPA support sessions, mostly because we do have live tutoring going on right now. And that live tutoring is available to anyone who's been a resident before. So our past residents that have the 3-year window to take and pass their tests. We have the Canvas course that's available, and then we have live tutors that some of them have been past residents, the majority, that have taken and passed their tests and done very well. And so they have a schedule that's linked there for their live tutoring sessions. And then we do have the EdTPA support sessions. And again, those are hosted, some of them are hosted by past residents that have done extremely well on their EdTPA portfolio. So we're excited about that. Again, we have made that mandatory this year for our current residents. It is optional for residents who did not pass EdTPA in the last year that they can attend, and we have a separate veteran sessions for them with one of our instructors. So those are available for them as well. All right, so we have a couple of shout outs today. First, we want to shout out Tiffany Brown at Nations Ford, who is a rock star. She is so supportive, as evident in the quote provided by her residents on the slide. We love all of our clinical educators and are so appreciative of all the work that they've been doing with our residents. They really go above and beyond already what they're doing in the building, I'm sure. We also want to highlight these principals. We have Michelle Gibbons at Clear Creek and Scott, I'm not going to pronounce his last name, Irwin, he's new, and Jennifer Schroeder at Crestdale Middle. We wanted to make sure that we highlight them. They really go above and beyond in their buildings, and they work so collaboratively with CMS Teaching Residency to support our residents, especially Iris as well as their teacher coordinator. And we appreciate all of you and look forward to seeing your feedback as well to help us grow. Okay, so as you know, the posting for teacher alternative licensure is open. Corinda just told us about that. It will stay open until May 1st. And as stated earlier in the slides from talent acquisition, this is the same job posting for all pathways, but when the licensure case managers review them, They provide an enrollment link directly to the ones that are eligible for CMS teaching residency. If you know anyone that might be interested, please send them the link. We really want to get people enrolled early in case they need testing to qualify. We're excited to be partnering with CPCC this year. This is very exciting for a GPA forgiveness program. So in the past, we've had people that are not eligible for CMS teaching residency because they didn't meet the minimum requirement of the 2.7 GPA. So this year, again, we're partnering with them. They're offering a spring training, or they're offering a program taking 2 classes that will count towards their GPA. We're going to be offering spring training again this year, and have asked the enrollees that are eligible and want to participate to please communicate with you all, since it will take some scheduling and support at the school level. We will be in touch, and if you have any of these people that we can support you in that process, you'll hear from us soon. If you do have someone in your building, because we will start scheduling meetings and things to just kind of get information out to you. More exciting news is that we've submitted a proposal to expand our areas to ML, ECAC, and social studies, and we will let you know if and when that becomes available. Right. One last plug for CMS teaching residency is that we need host schools. So for our new enrollees, we really would like to give them the opportunity to see CMS classrooms, see what it's like in the buildings, and get to experience kind of what a teacher does in a day, or at least for a couple of hours. So please let us know if you're interested in being a host school, and we'll get back to you to schedule something and set up a time for these new enrollees to come and visit your schools. We appreciate you all. Have a wonderful day, and if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Do we have any questions at this time?
There are no questions for the CMS teaching residency.
Thank you. Next, we have Allison Lowry from Licensure.
Good morning. My name is Allison Lowry, and I am the Licensure Case Manager for the South and Northwest Learning Community. Our team is working diligently to accurately assign career status codes to all new CMS employees as quickly as possible. For definitions of all career status codes, please refer to the CMS intranet licensure page. Several new career status have been created and added to cover the numerous alternative licensure options. As a few reminders about alternative licensed teachers in your buildings, they are all required to attend the pre-service training unless they are part of the CMS teaching residency or Teach for America. It is important to remember that these teachers are working on a one-year license and must take action towards the licensure requirements in order to continue beyond the 22-23 school year. We will be sending out a list to principals quarterly for these teachers so that you may be able to assist us in encouraging them to complete the necessary requirements to be eligible for rehire in 23-24. License applications for all alternative teachers must be filled through the licensure team. Must be filed through the licensure team. Thank you for your patience with us in this process. In mid-December or sooner, our team will begin the review of credits for all educators with continuing licenses expiring in 2023. All renewing teachers are required to have 8 CEU credits, to include the total must be 2 CEUs in digital learning competencies. These credits cannot be technology credits. Because this is a newer component of renewal, it seems to be the most difficult to meet. Encourage your teachers to get started early with these requirements to avoid any problems with renewals. If you have any questions, please reach out to your licensure case manager for your school. Is there any questions?
Thank you, Allison. There are no questions at this time.
Thank you.
Next, we have Torianne Kennedy from Beginning Teacher Development and Support.
Hi everyone, I'm Torianne with the Beginning Teacher Development and Support team, and I will be sharing some Beginning Teacher Support Program updates. Last week, NCDPI, as well as 7 public school units across North Carolina, that included the BTSP coordinators and human resources personnel, visited our school district. They completed the BTSP audit in 2 days. They were expecting to take 3 days, but we had everything super organized for them. They reviewed the evaluation record of activities, professional development plans, beginning teacher transcripts, mentor summatives, and mentor transcripts for 259 CMS beginning teachers. When we receive the completed report from NCDPI, we will share the specific outcomes with you. Right now, we want to thank you to all the mentor contacts and school leaders who supported beginning teachers last year and were part of our very successful audit. Just a reminder that pre-service training, known as PREP, is the state-required training for alternative licensed new hires. Our department is responsible for the 5-day initial training and the continued support during the teacher's first 3 years of teaching. Here is the most up-to-date data for PREP. 178 teachers were hired, trained, and ready to begin teaching their students on August 29th. September was a big month. Several schools had 5 or more teachers hired and trained during September, and October provided 40 new teachers. Since August, 212 alternative licensed teachers have been trained for Title I schools and 113 for non-Title I schools. We are off to a great start. Our department is super excited about our new YouTube channel, the BTDNS Connect 4. You can see the bit.ly in the bottom of the center of the screen, and it is also included on your handout. We encourage you to share this resource within your school and subscribe so you will receive notifications when we add new content. This channel has 4 playlists, one for beginning teachers, another one for mentors, one for mentor contacts, and of course, we have a playlist for you, our school leaders. Right now, we have a variety of PD videos for beginning teachers, such as student engagement, building relationships, as well as beginning teacher licensure information. You can see some of those options on the left side of your screen. On the right, you will see some of our videos for school leaders, mentor contacts, and mentors. One video in particular that we are very excited about is our interview with the CMS Principal of the Year, Danielle Belton from Paw Creek Elementary. Congratulations. We were lucky enough to meet with her as she shared some of her incredible insights to supporting mentors and beginning teachers. Believe us, this is a video you will definitely want to check out, and it's available on our YouTube channel. Last week, the Beginning Teacher Development and Support Department rolled out the red carpet for Beginning Teacher Academy, known as BTA, for our Title I beginning teachers. We hosted 99 beginning teachers from 39 Title I schools on November 2nd and 3rd. Participants were selected by principals based on talent they want to retain in their schools. Participants will attend 3 days of professional development over the course of this school year in November, February, and April. Each session focuses on Standard 4 and 5 of the teacher evaluation instrument while growing their personal and professional management. District specialists will be presenting each session to provide quality resources and tools to support our beginning teachers' personal and professional growth. Thank you to all our administrators who have been ensuring beginning teachers completed their professional development plan and Observation 1 by the due date. There is a specific state board policy around first and second year teachers requiring observation 1 to be completed by the end of the first quarter and observations 1 and 2 to be completed by the end of the first semester. Your third year beginning teachers can follow the district's evaluation timeline. Remember, the end of the first quarter and end of the first semester are hard due dates that are monitored by NCDPI. If you do not meet these expectations, you absolutely, positively must complete the record of activity. Coming up on January 20th is the due date for Formal Observation 2 and Professional Development Plan Mid-Year Review for your beginning teachers. Peer observations are due January 27th, and these can be done anytime now that you've completed Observation 1. Please remember, anyone hired by December 6th will require a full evaluation cycle, which includes 3 formal observations and a peer observation. Don't forget to facilitate the annual training and orientation with new hires to your school within their first 10 days. If there is any reason at all for not completing an observation or professional development plan by the dates assigned on the evaluation timeline, please, 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 I'm begging, make sure it is noted in the record of evaluation activities or the record of professional development plan activities for that teacher. For any beginning teacher who does not have all evaluation requirements completed on time, please access the record of activities in My Talent and add a note justifying why an observation or PDP signature was not completed according to the timeline. Directions for how to access and edit the record are linked in your handout. Here are all the different ways you can contact us and follow us. Please reach out if you have any questions or need support with anything.
Thank you, Torianne. Do we have any questions for this team?
One of the questions that just came in says, if a beginning teacher is a teaching resident with CMS, do they follow the same timeline as all other new teachers? And yes, if they are a beginning teacher, they need to follow the beginning teacher evaluation timeline.
Thank you. Next, we have Kelly McKinnon from Teacher Leader Pathway.
Good morning, everyone. This is Kelly McKinnon with the Department of Teacher Leadership and Teacher Leader Pathway. I have a few brief updates to give regarding the department. TOP Talent Pool Requalification window is now open. TOP principals, please remind all teacher leaders in your building that if they qualified for the talent pool before the 2019-2020 school year and have not applied for promotion since then, they must requalify. All TOP talent pool educators have received instructions and the form to requalify at this time. The window is open until December 15th, 2022. We have a few updates regarding our design sessions for schools wanting to enter the Teacher Leader Pathway. Teacher Leader Pathway is making a change in process to how and when we onboard new schools to better serve our schools, teachers, and students. The design session process, which is our TLP school training and onboarding process, was previously a year-long process that was required before schools could bring on teacher leaders. It will now consist of a shortened asynchronous introductory course, followed by learner-driven coursework in Canvas and one-on-one TLP coaching from our staff. We hope to solidify this course by mid-November so new schools may begin their training and make any changes to their school design by December. Schools will continue to need Learning Community Supervisor approval to qualify for the Teacher Leader Pathway. We currently have 16 schools who have expressed interest and received approval for a total of 103 Teacher Leader Pathway sites for the 2023 school year. Please be patient with us at this time as we may not have all the answers to your questions about this change. The talent pool for new teacher leader pathway applicants will still open in January. Newly accepted teacher leaders are permitted to accept end-of-year positions or promotions during their qualifying school year. So if they qualify at the end of January or early February, they are eligible to take a teacher leader pathway job immediately if their school has a position open. And finally, we have some updates to our teacher leader pathway team. We are growing, and I'm very excited about that. Congratulations to Bashay Ferris on his promotion as we welcome him back to the team. And we will soon be welcoming on an additional program specialist to the teacher leader pathway. Are there any questions at this time?
Thank you, Kelly. There are no questions at this time. Up next, we have Cheryl Munn from Performance Management.
Good morning, everybody. Hope that you are having a great day leading up to our 3-day weekend, and that you are preparing yourselves to sleep in late tomorrow, because I certainly will be sleeping in late. I am here to talk about PCLs, corrective action plans, and Power BI. Let's start with some announcements. First round of observations are due today. I know that you all gotten them all done and turned in. Yes, I can see your faces now. December 6th is the late hire cutoff date for instructional staff. So anyone hired from December the 7th through February the 23rd, they will be on the late hire evaluation plan. If they have a start date of December 6th, they can be on the regular evaluation plan. So December 6th is the late hire cutoff date. Any teachers hired after the start of school, and I believe Torianne touched on this a little bit in the beginning teacher session, but any teachers hired after the start of the school year, but before December the 7th, they need to have 2 observations before June 30th. What this means is if they are hired during the first observation due date time period, we don't want you to observe them within 2 weeks after being in the classroom. As long as you complete their 2 observations before the next observation due date, we are fine with that. We don't want to scare them off by observing them immediately just to meet a deadline. So if they are hired after the start of school and in between the observation deadlines or due dates, just make sure you get those 2 observations done before the next due date. Self-assessments and PDPs are due within 2 weeks of the start date. So make sure you complete their orientation within 10 days after they start. And then you can conduct their self-assessment and PDPs along the way as well. And please ask questions if you're unclear about that. December 9th, abbreviated observation 1 is due. And January 20th, 2023, observation 2, PDP mid-year, and PCLs should be generated for any employees with performance issues. And if you have someone on the LSS plan, you should request a peer observation for any of those employees that may have some performance concerns. And the self-assessment and initial review is due for your late hire people. And of course, evaluation timelines and everything else performance management can be found on the performance management intranet site. All right, PCLs. PCLs is one of the district-wide tools that we use to document performance concerns. No, this is not a tool that we use to get rid of staff. No, this is what we use to document performance concerns. The letters created through My Talent. We have copies and examples on the performance management website. Let's dig into what's on the PCL. The key components, you want to identify the standards and the elements where the performance is rated below proficient. So I am presenting this to you today because we finished the first round. We're leading up to the second round. So if you don't see any improvements between the first and the second round, you want to start the PCL process. So you're going to identify those specific concerns. That's the key, the specific concerns and in the areas that need to be improved. List the support provided to date. So anything that you've done leading up to that, you can include that on the PCL. List your general expectation moving forward and include the specific expectation in the form of a detailed plan for the teacher and administration to follow. This also includes any support that you will be providing the teacher as well. Here's some ideas. Everybody likes this one. Arrange to be videotaped. Use the evaluation instrument to rate the teacher's performance. So videotape the teacher, then sit with that teacher to evaluate their performance. You and the teacher look at the video and evaluate their performance. Have that teacher to observe other high-performing teachers in your school, and then ask them to complete a reflection. You know, I love book studies. Sometimes ask them to read a book or a portion of the book and reflect on the best practice. I wouldn't have them to read a book that you haven't read or something that you're going to read along with them. I'm just throwing that out there. Observe teachers at the employee school or off-site. PD. Weekly lesson plan, turn in with written feedback. Please make sure you provide the feedback if you ask them to turn in a lesson plan weekly. If they're on a monitor or directed PDP, if that's being used as part of the support, please reference that in the PCL. Reference those goals. Okay, corrective action plan. This is usually for your non-instructional people or your central office staff. If you're on this webinar, for your employees, they usually receive a corrective action plan. Now, the corrective action is similar to the PCL, but it's used for growth, but this could also lead to a termination if there is no change within the time allotted. Or you can continue the corrective action plan. So you want to identify the date of the incident. If a specific incident occurred, include that incident, include what happened and the policy violation. The effective date of the corrective action. This is the date that you met with the employee. The expiration date, which is usually 90 days. They have 90 days to improve. Your first checkpoint meeting, and the frequency of the additional checkpoint meetings. A good example of this would be attendance concerns. A corrective action plan would be good for that. Supporting evidence, include or attach any evidence that is relevant to the situation. Make sure that you've had, and I'm skipping to my next bullet, but make sure that you've had previous discussions about this. If you've written them up or you talked about their attendance before, you had a verbal conversation and it's documented, you can include all of that as supporting evidence. But if you wrote them up and never sent it to them, you can't use it. If you had a verbal discussion and didn't follow it up with an email, the employee will say you never talked to them about it. So make sure that you've discussed this with them prior to using it as supporting evidence. Always indicate the reason. Then include your performance expectations moving forward. What are your expectations of them now? And then the supervisor comments to assign reviewers. This means if there are other people or if there's more than one supervisor that's going to be working with you on this corrective action plan, they can also be assigned to review it. Checkpoint meetings. Please, 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 please do not hold yourself to weekly checkpoint meetings if you are not going to be able to participate. If that does not work with your schedule, do not set up weekly checkpoint meetings. Bi-weekly or monthly is usually pretty doable, but you have to make sure that you conduct those checkpoint meetings and that you are able to attend. And make sure that they're documented in MyTalent. Okay, these are the guidelines of your checkpoint meetings. Review the completion status. Let the employee talk about where they are in the process of either the PCL or the corrective action plan. Your current overall performance. So if there was another observation done, or if you reviewed some changes, if they're on the corrective action plan, discuss that in the checkpoint meetings. Any concerns that may have arisen and were not covered in the PCL or the corrective action plan should be discussed. So once you've had that initial meeting and you've discussed the PCL and the corrective action, and things have happened since then, you can also discuss that in the checkpoint meeting. The key is making sure you have that discussion so that you can use it for supporting evidence, supporting documentation. The support provided to the employee should be reviewed and a discussion of what, if any, further support might be needed. You maybe at the first couple of checkpoint meetings, you've seen a change immediately. I would not end it at that time, but you can. I wouldn't do it. I would continue it out to see if the change continues. Capture a summary of the discussion in the checkpoint meeting comments in MyTalent. That's understandable. Make sure you include whether improvement was noted or not. Okay, and once the final checkpoint meeting has been conducted and documented, you should complete the completion step in MyTalent to close it out. The completion step says there's no further action. Make sure in your comments you're noting whether the employee has completed everything in the corrective action or the PCL, or if they have not demonstrated it, and we need to move to either another timeline or take an additional step. All right, so we have covered PCLs, we have covered corrective action plan. Now let's talk about Power BI. What I will say about Power BI is I am so proud of you guys for attending the trainings and you are using the document. I mean, you are using the platform. And I know that because you guys are emailing me now and was emailing me before school started because you wanted to go ahead and get started in Power BI and start setting up your evaluation schedules. What I will say is, and I may say this a couple of times, you have to complete observations before all of that data will populate. So if you haven't completed observations, you won't be able to see attendance data or teacher demographics. So you have to complete observations first before that will populate. All right, so for the new people who don't know what Power BI is, it provides customized reports using existing data from MyTalent, and it transforms that data into visual interactive reports offering powerful insights and real-time analytics. What that means is you can review your observation completion data, teacher demographics, PCL information, all of that into Power BI in real time. How you get started? Go to app.powerbi.com and you can sign in with your CMS credentials. Then you go to apps. Access the principal document. Oh, and I'll say this, only principals have access to Power BI. Only principals. Click on the report title or the drop-down menu and select the content you wish to review. So you will start with either observation data or observation 1 completion report. If you completed your observations at this point, you should be able to see your observation 1 completion data. Okay, the human capital report will provide you with your human capital data in one location. This is that version of the Excel document that you used to receive from your human capital partners a couple of years ago. It's your teacher demographics, your current observation results, and performance data. This is where you will also see if they're on a monitored PDP or directed PDP. You'll also see their career status. You'll see the contract type. All that information is there on that human capital report page. This is also used by your human capital partners and district leadership. So you can, what this means is you can also select the evaluation type that you want to see. And it's there for that reason. We may want to go in and select only one type to run a report on at whatever particular moment we're looking at. So we may want to just look at an abbreviated, or we may want to look at the abbreviated, comprehensive, and standard. So you also have that access. You can click on observation 1, comprehensive, and standard for your school only. Okay, the observation data. The ratings for each observation element are listed on the observation information chart. The overall observation score is designed to highlight any performance deficiencies. So where you see PCL suggested, and my veteran principals who are very familiar with Power BI, you know exactly what this means. If they have 4 or more on a abbreviated or 8 or more developing, PCL suggested will populate. Keyword is suggested. It doesn't say PCL directed or PCL recommended. It says suggested. Only you know if it's time to move to that point. So PCL suggested will populate. Not demonstrated, for every not demonstrated rating, it gives them a negative 100 points. For every developing, it's a negative 1. So in the example on the screen, the top one overall score says a negative 25. It means that person has 25 developing ratings. Negative 14, they have 14 developing ratings. If they had not demonstrated, it would be a negative 114, meaning they had 1 not demonstrated and 14 developing. A highly effective teacher performance is highlighted in both the accomplished and the distinguished columns. There is no totals calculated in the accomplished and distinguished column. So your overall score in this first example that says a negative 13, it means they have 13 developing, 0 accomplished, 0 distinguished. In example 2, it shows the overall score of a negative 2 because they have 2 developing, but it also shows they have 12 accomplished and 0 distinguished. So the accomplished and the distinguished ratings are not included in the overall score. This is the screen you all know and love. The attendance screen, PCL and summary. There are four modules, I guess, on this page in Power BI. There's one for attendance, one for PCL, and one for the summary. So once you complete your observations, your attendance data will populate. This is the only area that is not in real time because it's tied to payroll. So attendance is usually about 2 weeks off, but as you can see, there is a column that says attendance letter suggested. If they have 8 or more absences, excused or unexcused, this attendance letter suggested, will populate. And then there's the completion reports. There are 3 reports. The completed observation report that shows the number of teachers, the number of required observations, the number of missing observations, and the completed percentages. Then there is the unsigned observation report that will show you everybody who has not had an observation or that it has not been signed or locked. And then the last column will be the not starting. And that's obvious. Power BI and My Talent are now in sync. So when it's locked by the administrator and it's considered locked in My Talent, it is now locked, considered completed in Power BI. Here's some guiding questions that you can ask yourself as you are reviewing your own data in Power BI. Is there consistency among your principals, assistant principals, and or deans regarding the ratings? Meaning, do you need to calibrate with your team again to see it because your ratings are off? What type of support must be provided to teachers that are performing below minimum performance expectations? The retention team has developed a suggested PCL spreadsheet that I can share with you guys that will help you to identify those teachers who are below minimum performance expectations and who are on the PCL in the PCL suggested group. Is there a teacher on track to have their license renewed based on their current observations? You can look at those ratings for the first observation, second and third to see if they are on track based on their renewal year and have those conversations with them. That concludes my portion of the HR webinar. Any questions?
Thank you, Cheryl. Currently, there are no questions at this time.
Awesome.
And lastly, we have Michelle Jean-Jumeau from Employee Relations.
Hello, everyone. I'm delighted to be here. I'm sharing with you today information about workplace accommodations. The Employee Relations Department handles requests for accommodations. Sometimes they come to us through the Benefits Department when an employee is returning from leave. More frequently, they come to us directly from the employees, and a little bit more rarely, the supervisors will be referring, supervisors, administrators will refer them to us. This presentation today was prepared by Nancy Chapman, who is our Workplace Accommodations Analyst, and hopefully, if there are any questions, feel free to reach out to myself, any member of our team, as well as Nancy. Requests and related documentation for accommodations should be sent to our department email box, which is listed on this slide. Federal law requires, and this is listed on the slide, that employers provide reasonable accommodations to qualified individuals with disabilities. Big words, a lot of information. So the negative that can come out if we don't provide an accommodation, that can result in a charge of discrimination being filed by the employee with the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. That's called EEOC. CMS, Employee Relations, would be responsible for responding to those charges. But what I really want you to focus on is the fact that the intent here of the law and of the district is that accommodations are designed to give the person with the disability, the employee, an equal chance to do their best at work. So a reasonable accommodation is not special treatment or favoritism. On this slide, you'll see some illustrations here, which really represent the determinations that employee relations will make in regards to a request for an accommodation when it's received by our department. We'll be determining whether the employee has an eligible disability and then whether the accommodation request is reasonable. What is considered generally a reasonable accommodation is a modification or adjustment to a job or the work environment. This slide outlines the who, what, when, and how about accommodations. Accommodations can be requested at any time. As I've mentioned, we usually receive requests directly from the employee. However, sometimes the administrator or supervisor will have been contacted first by the employee, and then they will reach out to employee relations about the accommodation request. So if a supervisor, administrator is put on notice that an employee may need an accommodation, they should notify our department by email through, as I mentioned previously, through our department email account. After the request is reviewed by employee relations, principals and supervisors are then asked to participate in a discussion about the workplace accommodation. And we'll talk a little bit more about this later. It's referred to as the interactive process. This slide outlines specific instructions for supervisors and managers, administrators, principals on how to respond or acknowledge a request for an accommodation and next steps. If an employee has notified you first, then you're expected to reach out to employee relations, not necessarily refer the employee to us, but go ahead and reach out on their behalf. If you have received medical documents related to the accommodation request, then they should be forwarded to employee relations. This doesn't really apply to absences or leave of absence. This is just in regards to an accommodation. There are a couple of important cautions on this slide that I want to make sure you're aware of. Employees, as a supervisor, supervisors should not be asking employees about their medical condition or requesting a medical note. If an employee is putting you on notice verbally that they need an accommodation, then you can then connect with employee relations and don't need to request from them the medical documentation. Once employee relations receives the accommodation request, we will take care of obtaining medical documentation if necessary. Once an accommodation request is received by employee relations, we will acknowledge receipt and share with the employee a copy of the CMS policy that's relevant to the accommodations. If medical documentation is needed to process the accommodation request, we will request that. Within 5 business days of receipt of the medical documentation, will determine if the employee has an eligible disability. Once that determination is made, as I've mentioned before, the interactive process, which is the organization or employee relations, the supervisor and the employee, that process, that discussion will begin. So if employee relations has determined, based on documentation, medical documentation, or what the employee is sharing, that the employee has a disability, then we convene the informal interactive meeting. We discuss the purpose and essential functions of the job, determine what limitations the employee has related to the job, and identify potential accommodations. Of course, the employee requests their accommodations, but from the employer's perspective, we also determine, well, what are some other accommodations that could also assist with the employee completing the job to the best of the ability. And then we select the reasonable accommodation that is most appropriate for both the employee and for the district or the employment setting, the school or department. This slide outlines 4 types of workplace accommodations. Most of the accommodations are going to run in the areas of job restructuring, reallocating or redistributing marginal job functions. Not major, not essential functions, but marginal job functions. Sometimes accommodations result in modified workplace policies. However, more rarely, there may be times that an accommodation may result in a modified or part-time schedule. And then finally, as a last recourse, when all other options have been exhausted, then reassignment of the employee may be considered. So don't want that to come first in mind when you think about an accommodation. So here you'll find in our little circles here examples of when CMS would not be required to provide workplace accommodations. For example, if an employee refuses to provide reasonable documentation of a medical condition, then an accommodation is not required. Essentially, the employee is not engaging in the process as we would expect and as federal law requires. If an essential job function is removed, then an accommodation is not required. Employers are not required to change supervisors as an accommodation, so that would not be an accommodation that would be approved. So when an accommodation is granted, employee relations will notify the employee and supervisor by letter, usually by email, of every accommodation or the accommodation that's been approved. We do want to remind supervisors about confidentiality when it comes to the Americans with Disabilities Act, which is essentially a federal law that requires the accommodations to be discussed and put into place. Once a supervisor receives an accommodation letter, that shouldn't be kept in an employee's personnel file. So that's on our side on HR as well as on the supervisor side. Supervisors should not be disclosing whether or what an accommodation has been approved. And if there are any inquiries, then those really have to be deflected. We really don't, we shouldn't and don't want this confidential information shared about any of our employees. And finally, just as a reminder, love this quote, wanted to share it with you about equity. Fair isn't everybody getting the same thing. Fair is everybody getting what they need in order to be successful. I'm sure that sounds familiar in our push, our goal to be equitable. So I'll open now to any questions if there are any.
Thank you, Michelle. Currently, there are no questions for this team.
All right, thank you. It's my pleasure being here today.
That concludes the November edition of the HR webinar. Thank you for your participation. If you have any additional questions, please enter them in the chat bar now or reach out to our subject matter experts directly following the webinar. If there are no questions, thank you so much for joining us and have a wonderful day.